Okay. Okay, we're live on Facebook and YouTube. I don't know how I'm doing it either. Let's see. Here we go. How's it going, everybody? Got one more show, fifth show of the day, with a really special lady, Kirsty Lee Greenshields. Let me just get the engineering stuff set up here. Seems to be a little bit of a delay. Anyway, yeah, Kirsty Lee's with us, Kirsty Lee Greenshields, and a very powerful lady. We've had her on here with her husband, who's going to be on later this month. We never had her on individually or him. So I thought it'd be a good idea to get to know them both individually. So we worked it out, and let me pull her up here and see what's been going on in Australia. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. There you go. Start video. There you are. What's happening?
Hello.
I'm having technical difficulties. Well, we'll get it.
This is the fifth show today.
Yeah, it's the fifth one. Well, it's a powerful day. I don't know why it all lined up this way, but Ending with you is going to be great. And I got to tell you, I love those pictures. I went and found that picture of you in the ocean and with the red heels, and I thought that really captured you. Well, obviously, you must think the same thing. So
I loved it. I loved it when you that you put the red heels, because just recently I put that as my cover photo, just because it was you've always had the power, dear, and Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. So yeah, it was funny that you included that photo as one of the ones for our little chat.
Yeah, it's pretty out there behind you where you live. It's very tropical.
Yeah, it's beautiful here. Northern New South Wales in Australia, Byron Bay, the Byron Lighthouse is like directly out behind me. So
you're in Byron Bay? Is that where you're at?
Yeah. Well, we are just inland from Byron Bay, like 20 minutes inland from Byron Bay.
Cool. Yeah. Very cool. So what's been happening on your end of the great unveiling lately?
It's such a powerful time, isn't it? Like, in Australia, people are so topsy-turvy right now, and it's fascinating to watch the polarities between those people that are holding the light and the people that are still stuck in the darkness. And for me personally, I've had some people like really come at me And but then I've had some people, I've had just random phone calls from people who are walking along the beach saying, I'm just so grateful to you and I'm so glad that you're in my life. So there's been those polarities, and the micro is the representation of the macro, isn't it? So I've been watching those own polarities play out in my own life, as well as what's going on in the world, and seeing how people are so incredibly empowered right now, or otherwise just feeling really powerless and needing to lash out at so many things, and including people.
Yeah, no, it's been trippy. I've been talking to people. I've been talking to people about it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, because and it's all perfect. I know that, and I know it has to come up, just like in our own experience on an individual level. We have these loops that keep playing that we're unconscious of, and then we become conscious of it, and then we've had enough of it, and we do something about it. But you see the same thing in like the light worker circles, and I guess otherwise too. But but we're a community, I guess, that's talks about oneness and unity consciousness, and yet there's this extreme, I'm going to say extreme, polarization, or polarizing projections or expressions or posts or whatever you want to call it. And it's interesting. It's just interesting. I'm not judging anybody, because I realize, it does follow the same pattern as our individual experience. But I'm just wondering, how long is it going to go on? Franco was on today, and he's got that intel where he kind of forecasts things, and every month there's been a theme, and I can't remember because I'm tired, but I can't remember the different themes, but they all lasted, 2 to 4 weeks. So typically during the month, he'd say, this is what's up for this month. But the last time he was on, he said from July, August, and half of September, it's all about integration. So we talked a lot about that today. So I guess this what we're talking about is characteristic of the integration. We're going to keep seeing it. We're going to keep bringing it up until we've had enough. And then that's exciting, though. To think that at some point the level of compassion will reach a certain level where judgment, because I guess it's the more compassion that is, expanded into the realm, the less judgment we'll have. And what's the world going to look like then? I mean, that's fascinating.
Yeah. I that what you just said about integration, I totally agree right now. That I see that people who've integrated their own darkness and are at peace with that shadow aspect of themselves, and all of those loops that you're talking about, are riding these waves so much easier than people who've still been trying to push away that the fact that the evil does exist. And we don't want evil to exist, but it does, and it's actually just a judgment. It's not bad, it's not good, it just is. And when we can accept that, we can go to those little parts in ourselves. And for me personally, like in 2014, when I was given the guidance that I needed to start this retreat, and it was called Embodying the Sacred Feminine Warrior, I was like, that's such a clunky name. But then I realized that to me, words are really important. And those words, every single one of those words meant something to me. And what I've realized over the last 6 years in doing that work is the embodiment of our spirit is exactly, that's where it's at.
That's it.
Because when we can embody all of our spirit, we have more space for all of this light that is like, we're currently being bombarded by light, being bombarded by darkness, but we're being bombarded by light as well. And we've got such a great capacity to be able to hold all of it when we're fully in this human body. Yeah. Like you always say, the human is the hero. The human's the hero because the human can hold so much. Yeah. But we don't have to hold it because we just allow it to move through us.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's pretty amazing too, is that as time goes on, we're actually, starting to become more and more aware and realize we're gods in the flesh. I mean, goddesses in the flesh. I mean, this is like kind of crazy to think that, we have that capacity to be able to do these things. And then you look at because it's always like, okay, we're unconscious of our shadow or whatever it may be. And so we look outside of ourselves and we go, oh, they do that and they do that, and I wouldn't do that. And it's kind of weird because we've kind of had this evolution where a lot of people in the community have begun to look, and have been for quite some time. We call it shadow work. Zero pointing is another part. And so we started to do that. Yet you see these projections uh, of this polarity, of the polarization of they're over there and we're over here kind of thing. And it's kind of reversed. It's like, okay, we found the shadow in ourselves, yet we see shadow out there. And we're still, I guess, at some level unconscious of some shadow in ourselves that the mirror is showing us. So it's just kind of interesting. But I look at it too, like that's one of the things about, talking to Franco, because this theme forecasting. He's forecasting like 2.5 months, and everything seems to lead to it. It's very credible because everybody is integrating, because we have had a lot of light, like you said, come in, which is affecting our body and our emotional and our mental and everything else. Uh, and so, but each one of us has gone through and goes through these periods where we get knocked off our square and get off balance. And then we've kind of learned that, hey, you know what? I just need to get through this because I know on the other side it's going to be a huge elevation. So if I look at this 2.5 month period, or this period of integration, however long it lasts, there's going to have to be a huge, huge expansion afterwards. It would only
Yeah.
make sense.
And you talked about the loops, and when we have the consciousness that we see those loops, how I see that then is we're in a spiral, and to me that's what ascension looks like. It's a spiral. It's like we don't just wake up one day and all of our darkness and all of our crap is gone. We're constantly working on it. Like even over the last week, I've been just working on little, like really small loops that I've noticed are still existing, particularly in my relationship with James, that I go, I'm done with this. I don't need this program to be in our relationship anymore. And so the more that I do that, the more that I allow the smaller the loops get, which means that I'm going up the spiral. And that aspect that you're talking about of, there's the darkness over here and the light over here. When we allow ourselves to move up that spiral, we get to that most powerful point of the pendulum, and we're not swinging and we're not buffeted anymore. Like we're at that fulcrum point, and we can look down on both aspects and see them swinging, not looking down from an ego.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Looking down from that perspective of the observer and going, right, I see this over here and I see this over here, and this is all a necessary part of me to come back to balance.
Yeah.
And when I stand at this most powerful point, that's where I want to be.
Yeah. And then you can see too, and it sounds like a cliche, but you can see the perfection of it. Like you can see, like even in the little things that happen in your own field or your own interactions or your own circles, there seems to be less judgment, and, we're, like you said, the spiral's an excellent example, because like you said, they like a corkscrew, they get tighter and tighter. So you're not as charged by things. And then of course, being in a relationship like I am and like you are, these last few weeks, they've been very, very significant. There's been some, what you just said a minute ago, I will no longer do this. We've had those conversations over here. And, it sounds kind of bad, but it isn't, because we both kind of have this perspective, which we both have been able to assist each other because of the relationship. So we know it's not as bad as it looks, but it's still something that has to be dealt with. And it seems like you're able to clear it quicker too. I can't even imagine going through like even these last few weeks single. I mean, I know there's people doing it, but I mean, it's such an advantage to have someone that you can, kind of have a review every day or recap things or, and just talk about these things because, it's all a new math. It really is.
It's interesting for us because we've actually, we've over the years, we've talked about our relationship and how we kind of go like an hourglass. And probably over these last few weeks, we have been quite separate. We've been on our own paths. So we've been a bit more alone in that path. But that's the aspect of the spiritual partnership, because we see each other so much more beyond the 3D personality. And instead of looking at that other person and blaming him for what's going on in my relationship, I'm turning back in here and going, right, what's the program that's running here that's creating this within me? Because I want to be done with that, because I want to get back to this point where we're moving, where we're moving together again.
Yeah.
So that's all. It is all a necessary part, because one of my things was I would run away from the difficult things in our relationship. And so I would, if it was hard, then I'd get out of there. Whereas having this beautiful relationship that I have with James, and we just had, last week was 21 years we've been together. So we've been doing this for a long time now. And to be able to know, just to have that sense of stability and go, I know that everything's going to be fine and it's going to be divinely worked out, even though we've always said we don't know if we'll be together in 10 years, but we're together right now and we're going to make it work. However that.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I mean, we've not been together 21 years, and congratulations. But like the old, I don't know if the right word stereotype, because I think it's beyond stereotype. It's more like, in the old paradigm, women had certain characteristics in a relationship in general, and men had certain characteristics. Like a man would, shut down, or they're just the different things, the Mars Venus things. But like those things are going away. Like that program can't run anymore. And so like what you said is what Morgan has always said. The first thing she does is take it into herself. And of course I learned from that. And I've really seen a lot of progress, not that there was an issue, but I think it's more of an indicator of what energy is available and what energy people, not just couples, not just men or women, but that people are actually starting to actualize and embody, like you said earlier. It's different. It's really different, but it's cool. It really is.
And it's just losing that projection. Imagine if everyone just was able to do that and stop projecting on,
the world would be a lot quieter place, I think. That's one thing I'm learning. I mean, and I've talked about it, but I mean, I'm learning more and more. If I can just keep it contained, in my thoughts, even though the thoughts are powerful. So if you let your imagination run off into some whatever you create, but still, if I don't speak and I don't take an action, that's two less things I have to deal with. Now I'm just like, okay, why is this thought coming in? And why are you letting your imagination run away? Why are you thinking, oh, he did this or she did that, and they're thinking this or they're thinking that? And you can start to work on that stuff and neutralize it, which essentially it ends up in the same place, or I'm seeing it headed that direction, which is quiet. If I'm quiet with my mouth, the next thing is my head, and just if those things start playing, I'm recognizing them as an old loop, an old thought pattern, and just quiet it down.
That aspect is so powerful, and that's like at that fulcrum point of the pendulum, because when you can see the thought and recognize it and then not act on it, you then stabilize yourself and you stay in a position of power. And when you stay in that position of power, no one else can buffer you.
No.
And you don't need someone else to tell you what to do. You don't need to feel frustration at what's going on in the world. And gosh, I'm not saying that I haven't felt frustrated. Of course, there's so much going on that there's frustration and there's anger and there's sadness and there's fear. But the more that you can stay in that point of, this is a thought I'm having, but I actually don't have to speak it and I don't have to act on it.
That's right.
And when I do that, I stay in the stillness.
Yeah. And it's not me, and like you said, I don't want this program running anymore, like in the relationship or with myself. It's not me, I mean, I've had, on a personal level, and I think for 9 years I've been plugged in, just like everybody, and I'm working on myself and having that dialogue going on in my head. But over the last few months, it seems like I can look at myself and I'm not saying I'm even close to being where I need to be or whatever, but I know I've made a lot of progress. And there's been a few times when I went, wow, you could actually see, the proofs in the pudding, like, oh, wow, that worked. Now I've got a little friendlier voice coming in. A little friendlier voice comes in now and it says, hey, just keep doing that.
Because that's so important as well, is that self-reflection and to go, oh, wow, like I know that I'm way further ahead than I was. Look where I was 12 months ago, or look where I was 2 years ago. And so many of us don't do that either, because life's moving so fast and we forget. Whereas if I just stop and go, where was I 12 months and what are the big things that I've dealt with? Oh, I've actually come a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I noticed too, which is really weird was weird for me, was, so I used to I might say something, and whether it was her or somebody else, I mean, they would take it a certain way. Like I might say something and mean something that was not volatile, not, whatever, not, intrusive or whatever. And they would take it a different way. And I'd be like, they got a problem, but then I started doing what you're talking about, and Morgan talks about, take it into myself. Oh, it's not them, it's me. And then I started to notice people doing it to me. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and so it got reversed. I thought, and then I could just observe it though. Then I could just go, okay. Or if the same thing happened, if I said something, I guess I had it backwards. They would say something, I would overreact. Then I worked, I thought, well, how could you say that? But it was really me. And so then it reversed, and then something said to me, and I can sit there and go, oh, I don't have to do that. I don't have to react that way. I can see now that I was, so yeah, this is like boots on the ground, quantum, boot camp. I mean, it is. It is.
But there's no room for blame in this world. There's no room for blame. There's no room for victimhood. There's no room for powerlessness. There's like powerless language. And that's, that people are waking up to the truth that we've been under a spell, to all of us to varying degrees. And when we start to wake up, we're not under that spell anymore. And the words we use to ourselves are so important, because they're the things that we're creating the magic with.
That's right. The magic or the horror. So it's, there's a big difference between, being conscious and unconscious, and we're learning that. Another thing I noticed too recently was, I've kind of looked at this, how do you be, we have to be direct. We have to kind of emulate telepathy with words until we're full-blown telepathic. So you have someone, a friend or a business acquaintance or whatever, and, or kid, could be a relative, whatever. And you see what's going on. How direct are you to be? So do you know what I mean? Like unsolicited advice, that type of thing. So I started okay, working on that. And again, I just went quiet. And because if I didn't know if I was in the right balance, then I wouldn't do it. But then, so I made some progress on that. And then I started to notice myself having the urge to be direct with people, but not in a constructive, critical way, for lack of a better way to put it, but in a positive way. Like not blowing smoke, like I love you, da da da, but like, hey, you know what? I really appreciate what you bring to the table. Like I'm having the urge to tell people, I guess, in a way, without saying I love you, not that there's anything wrong with that, but just saying, hey, you know what? This is what you do for me. And I appreciate what you do, for me or for the collective. So I that was a new twist for me. Other people might have already gotten there, but for me, it was new.
Which is, that's the light end, isn't it, of the spectrum? That's that what I was talking to you about, the phone call that I get from somebody walking on the beach going, thank you so much. I'm really grateful for who you are. Yeah. And being able to do that. And just as I'm thinking about that, it's actually within ourselves. What we're doing is we're closing that giving and receiving loop, and we're allowing it to flow freely. Because if I'm outwardly expressing my gratitude or my thanks or my love to somebody who's done something for me, I'm receiving and giving at the same time. True. So I'm creating that infinite abundance loop for myself. And that brings me into the present moment as well. That brings me into that 0 point and that stillness. And it's from there that, I can feel the gratitude, and that heart state is so powerful that brings me more.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's another thing that's changing too. I'm glad you brought that up. It's the whole giving and receiving. The definition of giving and receiving in the old paradigm, which was a codependent paradigm, like, so if I give you something, there's an expectation, that type of thing. But now giving and receiving is actually, I don't know, to me, it's like the same thing. Like it's one word instead of two. And it's a frequency or an energy that just like the other one created more of whatever it is. So here we go on the other side of the mountain. Now we're like a snowball going downhill, just getting bigger and bigger and bigger in a good way. Yeah.
And that's it's one thing that has been really important to me, particularly over the last few years with myself, and then in talking to other people as well. What I say is receive the gift of my giving. So if I'm giving, no matter what I'm giving, allow myself to receive that. So I'm putting myself in the other person's shoes, I'm receiving it, but at the same time, I'm standing in who I am, and I'm receiving the worth and the value of what I'm actually giving to this person, not even by needing to do anything, maybe just by sitting here and being with this person and receiving the gratitude that that person has, or whatever it is. I'm not having to do anything. I'm not having to be in that old way of I have to do so I can receive. Right. I'm simply being, and that is my doing, which means that I can receive. It's that masculine, feminine, flowing, beautiful flow.
That's a good point. That's good stuff, because because so you're actually taking that same thing that's never them, it's always me. So you're actually giving. It's almost like you're giving to yourself, and you're receiving it yourself. And regardless of what they do, what they acknowledge or don't acknowledge, you're in the same place. Like you said, nothing can penetrate that.
That's, and it's so powerful. It's really challenging sometimes, because somebody might text me and say, I can't condone what you've just said or what you've done or whatever. And then to stand in that place and go, like, that person is me, but that person is an aspect of me that's not wanting to allow myself to fully step into my voice. And that's okay. I can see that person, and I can give that person love and respond from that place. I don't have to respond from a defensive position anymore. So it's so incredibly powerful, yet really challenging at the same time.
Yeah, it's like probably like 6 to 12 months ago. So I was in a period. I got away from looking at comments, and I don't answer them because I couldn't, because it would create this volley back and forth. It could be good comments, and I say a good thing, and then, but I was noticing that some people would make they would make a comment like, you need to do this on your show, or you do this, or you do that. And I wouldn't write anything. I want to. And I'd be like, yeah, why don't you effing try it? Why don't you try doing 3 or 4 or 5 shows in a day while these energies are bombarding you? But I worked on it. And so, and that's another thing too, which changed for me, which I think is changing for a lot of people, is seeing things that we would see as detrimental or as antagonistic. And we're now seeing them as gifts. Like, here's an opportunity. I don't know what's in me that I'm unconscious about that's making me upset or uncomfortable. But I know if I keep pulling this thing up in front of me, that I'll get to it. And you can tell, because your whole body, like Morgan's process with the invocation, like when you clear something and when you hit pay dirt, because your whole body tells you, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, because you're in your body. Yeah. And to me, I see those now. I receive those gifts because those gifts are there to allow me to stand even firmly in my sovereignty, and have my boundaries, and to know what's important to me, and to be able to communicate that the best way that I possibly can, and then at the same time, because that's my choice, and then at the same time accept that this person over here, which represents a part of me, is still choosing to have that experience. And that's okay as well, because I had to go through my own experience to get where I am. It's like the same as raising children. No human, I can't remember who, I saw it yesterday, and it was like, no human has the right to have authority over another human. No. And that's 100%. I would say. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Whether it's a child, whether it's another adult, none of us has authority over another.
Yeah, it's like MYOFB. MYOB, mind your own business. I just added an F in there. But no, you're right, though. And I was asking Franco about that a couple of shows back. And I said, I wonder how the whole giving our power away to authority is going to roll. Like, that's like, to me, that's, like, you can see, this came in and we integrated collectively, and then this is coming in. And I'm looking at that one going, because, you're talking about, a police officer pulls you over and asks you something that, doesn't follow the proper guidelines. I mean, how many people acquiesce to that? And I'm not picking on cops. I'm talking about anything like, oh, you need to pay this tax, or, oh, you can't come into my restaurant without a mask, but all these things are like popping up now. And I'm kind of seeing the sovereignty frequency everywhere, like this, just shooting up a little bit, not like major transformations, but like little seeds are being planted by this, and what I'll call it antagonists, or whatever, authoritative cycles or paradigms or templates. But people are starting to go, wait a minute, hang on a second. I don't want to do that. I'm not, I don't have, just what you said. You don't really have that authority over me. You don't have that right, and it's an infringement on your energetic field.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is an infringement. And if we know, it's the thing that, because I've been talking to my daughters about it quite a bit. Like, my daughter and I went and had some leg waxing done when everything opened up again, and she went in before me. And when we went in, there was a new process in the salon, and one of the things that you needed to do, you had to sign in, which I was fine with, but then they also had one of those things that they point at your forehead to take your temperature. And this woman said to me, I just need you to sign the form, and I'm going to point this at your forehead to get your temperature. And I said, no, I don't want you to do that. And the receptionist kind of took a step back, and she said, oh, but you need to do that to come in. And I said, well, if that's what I have to do to come in, then I'm happy not to come in. And she's like, well, can I ask you why? And I said, because I don't want you to point that thing at my forehead. I don't think it's necessary. I've told you that I don't have a temperature. So I'm asking you to take my word for it.
Yes.
Anyway, she went and asked the salon owner, and the salon owner was like, yep, fine, it's no worries, I know her, allow her to come in. But then I was talking to Abby afterwards, and she's like, oh, I didn't know, because I was just signing the form, and she pointed it at my forehead and said, I need to take your temperature. So because Abby's a younger person, she didn't actually ask her permission. And Abby in that moment didn't realize she had a choice. And I said to Abs, it's okay, because you know now that you have a choice, which means that in the next situation when it arises, you'll get the opportunity, if it doesn't feel right for you, to be able to say, no, thanks, I don't want you to do that. And that every moment we're getting that opportunity right now.
Yeah, I like the way you put that, getting the opportunity, because that's what I was talking about. Because we think of authority, and we think of, a cop, or we think of the government, or, you go in a bank, or whatever the case is, but it's actually these little loops, these little things these little programs running, like what happened with her and you. You wouldn't think that's, the same thing, but it is. The breakdown, it's an all or nothing proposition. But I do think that we are getting more and more opportunities to do that, given the circumstances, which, as Morgan said a couple of months ago, God, look at this magnificent creation that we all created collectively, to assist us and accelerate our ascension, basically.
Yeah, we did. We've done a good job, haven't we?
I think so. Yeah. If you look at it that way, like you said about using the word opportunity, it's true. It really is. It's giving people, it's allowing people, like you said, to consider, to consider their actions, because let's just say that we call it the authoritative or the false authority frequent or energy is being presented more and more and more in different and more noticeable places. And I really think that's what the whole sovereignty frequency ignites from, is if you look at a lot of the stories, like I don't know yours so well, but I know James's, which you were part of. Yeah, because I remember the story. But a lot of these people that come on the show, including myself, had these situations that just got to DEFCON 5, and you just finally said, wait a minute, I'm just not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you were talking about earlier in the relationship, in programs playing in the relationship, and you just say, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm just not going to do it. And, I would rather see what's going to happen to me, if anything, as a result of me refusing to participate, because it hurts my soul.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It hurts my body. It hurts my it hurts my feelings, literally, like I'm hurting myself if I make this decision, because I'm in that tiny little situation that looks so small, and people go, well, why don't you just do it? No, because it hurts me to do that, because it doesn't feel right. And so if it doesn't feel right for me, then I'm asking you to respect that. I don't need you to respect it, but I'm asking you to respect that. And if it means that I can't interact with you, then it's okay. I will move somewhere else.
Yeah.
James, we were in conversation recently, and James made a comment, and he said something like, right now in the world, it's becoming really obvious to us. It's become really obvious that there's these powerful people, like Bill Gates, for example. Can we say his name without getting blocked?
Who go do whatever you want to do. I'm with you.
There's these powerful people who are, they are influencing the narrative so much, but they're not actually gazetted by the public. So, for instance, they're not voted in that way. And when he said that, something really twigged in me, and I went, that's what, because that particular person that I mentioned before, he was really, I found him hard to reconcile, like the evil within that I felt in that energy. I felt that difficult to reconcile within myself. And when James said that, what I realized was he's actually offering me the opportunity to see the power that one person can have. Yep, he's got lots of money. The power that one person can have when they stand up and they have this absolute conviction in what they say, and how that can influence a narrative so powerfully. That means every single one of us has the capacity to do that, because he's not voted in by anybody. He's not gazetted by any sort of authority. He just goes, yeah, I'm the man and I can do this.
Well, you know, somebody, Jennifer Perez, thank you, Jennifer. She just put up this note. She said, I'm noticing there's less patriarchal energy, more divine feminine energy and everything, which is what we were talking about on the last show. But like going back to that, to me, that's a patriarchal trait, not to be confused with the masculine trait. I'm talking about a patriarchal trait that we've all been, our patriarchal realm, we've all been subjected to. And that's where, and this is what I see happening too with the mask and like with, I'm going to point that at your head and all that. It's like something said, like the person you're talking about, I'm not a doctor, but everybody needs to be vaccinated, you know? And then there's a pushback like, hey, wait a minute. You know what? That's not right. But it's like, they don't even listen. They just keep going. That patriarchal thing will just keep going. It's kind of like your parents, do as I say, not as I do. You know what I mean? That old saying. So it's like, it falls on deaf ears and they don't listen. They just keep right on going. And when I say they, of course, I just mean the energy. And again, these things that are happening where, you know, like for instance, you questioned that. You said, or you didn't question it. You said, I'm not willing to do that. So what happens? You know, and people are looking at you like, well, wait, you can't do that. Well, why not? Why can't I do that? You know? And I think that's kind of indicative of, you know, what I'm trying to say that I see happening out there on many, many fronts. You know, there's many, many things that are occurring that are people are starting to say, well, that's not right. Why is it continuing to happen? You know, so,
And even the divisiveness, you know, people arguing about masks and people arguing about vaccine, you know, all of that, it's all serving a purpose, because people are, you know, it might not be the person who's doggedly having one perspective or the other, but because of social media has opened our world up, it means that people get to interact in these conversations. They get to watch these conversations and they get to see both points of view, both polarities, like standing in the middle going like this. And that is naturally opening people up to experiences that they might not have had before, which means that they can, you know, that's going to wake people up even more as well. And what you're saying about Franco in this integration period, it's a period of transition from that patriarchal energy too. Like we can't just drop, like the patriarchal energy is dissolving because it can't hold in the vibration, but we can't just drop it because then we create absolute chaos. So those of us who've done the work need to move freely and in that place of balance and stability, and do those little things to say no when it feels wrong, you know, when it feels wrong in my body or it feels wrong in my soul.
Yeah. And then, you know, too, so like the information, like you said, you know, you have social media, so you're privy to more, and then you can express more. And then there's the truth. You know, there's a big thing about what do they call it? The truth checkers, the fact checkers, and they're blocking people. And so it's also like, are you taking everything at face value? Like I saw this post yesterday, and it was about that lady, Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend that got arrested. And it said, do you know who Dr. Fauci, who's the Surgeon General for the US, the little short guy that comes out with Trump a lot about the COVID? Do you know who he's married to? He's married to so-and-so Maxwell, who's the sister of Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend. And Morgan was walking out. I said, look at this, you know, she's like, oh, but then I thought to myself, you know, she walked out the door and then I went, wait a minute. How do I know that's true?
Yeah.
I did. I go, how do I know that's true? So I got my phone and I searched it, and sure enough, I found several articles, credible articles. They weren't like CNN and all that, saying that, this was put out there. And I even found where it started. It started from a lady who's an activist, who put it out on Twitter. And then I found her retraction. She came back and said, "Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't check it out. It wasn't true." So it's like, this is beyond discernment. This is telling me, why did you gravitate to that? Why are you siding with that side of the argument, or that polarity, as opposed to the other one? And then it goes back to me again and says, this is what self-reliance is. This is what self-responsibility is, and being a responsible co-creator, because you could pick that ball up and throw it out there like it's the truth and influence other people,
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
We're drilling down now, I think.
Yeah.
We really
And
are.
gosh, that discernment is the key to drilling down.
Mm-hmm.
It's just asking that question, and it's taking a breath, coming back to stillness and going, is this true? And is this something that do I need to give my energy to this right now?
Yeah.
Because discernment is like the throat chakra sutra. So if I'm not discerning, I'm just going to like mouth off about it, or I'm going to express myself in a completely ungrounded way. But if I allow myself to be in this moment, then I'm going to integrate into my body even more and have a greater understanding of my energy, make a more powerful choice, and allow myself to be here now.
Yeah, I like what you said too about, like if your feelings get hurt, you feel it in your body. So like the body's really coming into play this year. And, you can tell when something isn't right. I guess it's intuition, and now the body as a consciousness we become more aware of it, or it's become more integrated with us, or something's happening, because it's essentially talking to us, but I guess maybe we're listening more. I don't know. But yeah, so I like what you said too about, do I even need to put my attention there? Do I even need to put my focus there? So I had this happen, and I said this twice. It'll be the last time I say it on the show. So we found this place after 3.5 years. We move in, and it's a duplex. And so on the street level, it looks, like it's a little small duplex. But if you go down the driveway, it's got a double car garage, and you can't see that part. So evidently it was vacant for several months. We're coming out of the driveway, and a cop pulls up next to us. And this is a small town in Arkansas. And he motions to us as we're pulling out of our driveway, and he tells us to stop. He walks up to the door and he says, "What are you doing coming out of here? What are you doing back there?" And I looked at Morgan and I said, "Well, we live here." He said, "Give me your license." This is how he said it to me. "Give me your license." And my body went into, it wasn't rebellion. It was just, and I went, "No, I didn't do anything wrong." So anyway, it worked out. We gave him, and it was all fine. But then I went back and I went, why did that happen? And I had been watching these videos of, police encounters and interactions with civilians and all that. And I wasn't getting charged. I was kind of doing it. I didn't know why I was doing it. And I really wasn't getting charged. I didn't think I was. But the message was what you said. So when I came out of it and reflected on it, I went, I don't need to watch those. There's no reason for me to watch those. I'm not getting a charge. So why would I watch them? You know what I mean? So that was it. But to me, that was a really good lesson, because it's not like, oh, that doesn't exist. It's not like, people say fluffy love and light, I'm not going to look at it, it'll go away. And in a sense it will. But the whole point is, I don't even need that in my field. And if I don't have it in my field, it's never going to show up.
Yeah. And that's certainly been a balance for me since this whole Corona times, that's really been, I feel like I've come more into balance with that as well. What do I need to give my energy to? What do I need to look at? Where is my purpose? I know that I'm here as a light worker. What percentage of my energy do I give to the light? What percentage? Because I still know that I've got a role to help people integrate the darkness. And so it's just, again, it's like every moment, every choice. There's no template. There's no template for any of us. It's about every single moment. It's that discernment. It's that, do I want to give my energy to this thing in this moment?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's enlightenment.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's right. That's ascending. That's not ascended. That's ascending.
That's ascending.
But it is. But you're right. There's not a template. We're creating it. We're actually creating it. We're actually, you know, where's I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but to me, because it's such a physical realm, because it's so real, you know, like I feel like that we're what we're doing here is zero pointing the most extreme polarities ever, which equates to the at least the greatest potential for expansion ever, you know.
Yeah. But I like what you just said about because it's so real, because there's so much that's been sold to us about being real that isn't necessarily real in my perception, for instance. You know, like if we look at Hollywood, for example, and there's so much that Hollywood reflects back to us, but then at the same time, there's so much that people believe about Hollywood is real. Yet, you know, a number of years ago, that there was a bill that was signed that allowed the government to do psychological operations on the domestic population. So what's real in the information that's being given to us? And so again, it's coming back to the moment, what feels real for me in this moment, in this reality that I'm living in, what feels real for me. And if it doesn't feel good, do I want it to be part of my reality, or do I want to create something different? Because we've never been here in this moment, and we've all got the chance to create. Well,
and two, you know, and it's a hard pill to swallow to see some of the stuff that's going on and own it, you know. But if you look at the patriarchal paradigm that we're coming out of and that we're transforming, there's a very prominent narcissistic aspect to it, which is it's okay for me, but it's not okay for them. You know what I mean? Like, just like you talked about with that psychological testing and many other things. You know, I was watching one of Robert Sepper's program with Atlantean Gardens last night about civilization in the Grand Canyon dating back, you know, and they found these tunnels in the early 1900s, and they're cut like perfectly, like the pyramids were built. I mean, they're underground tunnels, and there's sarcophaguses of giants, and there's just copper, and there's just amazing stuff. But after these people found it, the government came in and declared it not just there, but illegal in the U.S. to explore these types of caves. And I thought, well, that's the same thing. You know, it's like okay for us, but not okay for you. What you don't know will hurt you. Esoteric knowledge, you might want to put it that way, or any secret knowledge that you're keeping from the masses, that's a very narcissistic, that's hoarding. It's no different than holding on to billions of dollars, you know what I mean? So that's a big domino that we have to equalize or knock down. But we can't, you know, none of this stuff would be happening or in play if it wasn't alive in us.
Yeah.
At some
and it's
level.
huge. That narcissistic element is huge because it's been so in the narrative for a number of years, you know, narcissists and empaths.
Yeah.
It's so in the narrative. And so much of the work I've done over the last few years is to help people see and come to terms with their own narcissist, because we all have it in us, because we're all human. And
you sound just
it's
like
allowed.
Morgan. You sound just
What's
like
that?
Morgan. You sound just like Morgan. But yeah, you're right. And so that's a good point too about the empaths, because I remember, you know, several years ago when I came onto social media, there was a lot of empath groups, and a lot of them had that information. You saw a lot of memes about living with a narcissist and empaths and narcissists. But if you think about the perfection of that, I think most light workers would consider themselves an empath. That's one of the prerequisites, basically, because you got a higher sensitivity and you take on people's stuff. But the individual transformations that these people have had, have had an effect on what's happening now.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Does it feel like, how am I trying to say this? Like, to me, like June 1st, like something changed. Like, to me, it was like something totally changed. I don't know how to put it. Like there was less interference, or the interference was gone, or something. It just felt lighter. Do you feel like we've turned a corner?
I absolutely feel like we've turned a corner. I noticed when, and it's hard for me to like be in time to be in time. I've found time really difficult these last few weeks.
Yeah.
But I agree with you about June. I felt that there was a greater peace. What I did notice was a spike when schools went back here in Australia, and the level of stress and anxiety, I noticed the collective really increased then as well. And I felt that in my own body and really had to work to ground for quite a few days, because
that's interesting.
There was questioning, like I could feel people questioning, well, it's been working okay. Not everyone, of course, but it's been working okay how it was. Like maybe this is not, this is not how we want to do it. Go back into the old loop. Maybe we want to create something new.
That's what I was going to ask you. That's interesting because of course school ends here in May. So I can't really relate to that, but I'm wondering, were they stressing because of the fear of the virus and this and that, or were they stressing because they had to go back to the grind?
Yeah, I think there was probably a bit of both. I think it was going back to the grind and going, well, actually this doesn't really fit with us anymore. But then also there was fear, like that there were stories of kids coming home saying that they were going to get needles tomorrow, and their parents hadn't been asked consent, and all this weird stuff has all been thrown into the mix. So and I don't know, like my girls don't go to school, so I don't know if that's true, and I can't confirm that, but friends who were in different groups were sharing this information and saying this is how it was. So I think that there's definitely been, I know in Australia there's definitely been an amp up of the fear over this last week particularly, but collectively I did notice June, which is probably why there's been a ramp up of the fear, because I did notice June people were really getting into the groove of wow, this is nice to have this peaceful which didn't really affect people like us too much. But
I know that's another thing. That's another thing with the quarantine thing too, is that most of us are homebodies anyway. So nothing really changed, We weren't out there doing what everybody else was doing.
Yeah, I saved $100 in petrol because I didn't have to drive my girls to their circus lessons and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So do you have anything coming up? Is there anything you're getting into that you want to tell people about?
I just with a girlfriend of mine in New York, when things ramped up about a month, maybe 6 weeks ago, I messaged her, and we hadn't actually met in person, and she said we need to have a Zoom chat, and we had a Zoom chat, and both of us really felt like we wanted to start a sister circle, and so we've actually started a global sister circle. It goes every 2 weeks. So if anyone that's watching this feels resonance with that, it's not a massive group, but what we're doing is we're just holding the vibration.
Where do they find it? Does it have a special page?
Yeah, just message me. And we don't have a special page. We have a private group that we've set up to support in between our circles. But just message me, and the investment that a woman makes to join that circle is simply to bring herself wholly and solely to support humanity. Yeah,
that's the new. That's it, man. That more and more of that's coming around. I had a lady on the other day. It's hard for me to remember, but she was on. Oh, and I didn't even know it, but she had met three other. One's from Adelaide. She had met 3 ladies through Soulology. One's in Israel. One's in India, I believe. one's in Adelaide, and then she's in Canada. And that's what they did. They met each other, and then they brought in a couple more, so like 6 of them. So they meet, and then they also support each other,
Yeah.
in a, I guess I would say, in a 5D way.
Yeah.
She talked about being in the hospital for a week, and they were all there, and how they all had their own specialties, and they all converge their intentions on certain projects, and everybody brings their specialty. But I think the sisterhood kind of energy or power is really starting to come out now. It's starting to come
Yeah.
out.
And the lightness of it. Like, I know I read a post by Morgan a little while ago, which I totally resonated with. It was so beautiful about like releasing the competitive energy that we feel towards other women. And I feel that was the dark side of sisterhood. And I feel that more and more women are stepping into that light and the collaborative, because that patriarchal vibration is dissipating. And and so for us, we just really felt that as well. And we know, like, I know there's so many other women and so many other men doing beautiful things too. And the more that we all contribute from this space, this present space of here and now, and know that, for me, it's when these women show up in circle, and funnily enough, without even planning it, the first circle we had 13 women, which I thought was awesome. But they show up in circle, they're proving to themselves that I'm valuable just by being here.
Yeah. And that whole the competition thing, and I think that I think personally, in my opinion, that was a patriarchal impression on the feminine, because it just is. They've always been more supportive with each other, and so on and so on. We know this, but like, you guys are closer to that. No, women's intuition. You're closer to that, and maybe the men were the pawns, more of the pawns, but yeah, I think that it only makes sense that these little cells like this. I wasn't surprised. In fact, we're going to get them on, just to have them all on at the same time. I have to get up at 7 a.m. to do it, just to see what their experience is like, and just to be exposed to the power of it. Because I think that obviously, if the women are closer to it, they're going to have, well, it would only make sense that they're going to go first, because the men are more competitive. There are more alpha. There are more, compare each other to each other. And we know that's not going to sustain itself in these energies. So, obviously you guys are leading the way. And I was really intrigued by that whole story that she told me. And then you're basically doing the same thing. So how many more cells are like that around the world? Another great benefit to our creation of the quarantine and the COVID, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I just want to say, I love what you just said about the women leading the way. Yeah. I believe that the women have been leading the way for some time.
Absolutely.
And I also see now more men, like you, like James, like so many beautiful men that I know are stepping forward, integrating that feminine aspect and leading from that space, because women aren't going to do it alone. Like, we are walking side by side in this. And it's that's again another aspect of the integration phase.
Yeah. Yeah. Once they realize that they're not going to lose their manhood. But I'm speaking from experience, but really, because that's that, like, okay, so like, it's common knowledge, like, if a man loses his job, it's devastating. If a woman loses her job, it's less devastating. More men commit suicide when their career's over than than women. So there's this thing where, we're afraid to give up this power that we didn't even have, and but yeah, that surrender it's a sweet surrender. And like I was talking about this on the last show, when that surrender is allowed, or when it occurs, there's an incredible magic that comes in, which is, I guess, I guess that's what happens when the masculine meets the feminine on that side of it all, and we bring back, you know, that magic, that alchemy, or whatever, that third energy, the golden child, whatever. Yeah, it's getting exciting, isn't it?
The purity. Yeah, absolutely. It is getting exciting.
You are
I love
you are a
excited.
beautiful, beautiful, beloved sister. I look forward to talking to James. I think it's on the 19th, and I look forward to collaborating with you again, both together and individually. I think it's important. You know, Morgan has got her thing blew up, and she's pretty much on that mostly. So one of the first things I did was, I got to pat myself on the back. I was like, I looked at y'all and I was like, oh, I'm going to have them on separately, you know? Well, because I think that's a big part of, you know, the you know, the misunderstanding, or the, you know, of couples, is they're still individuals. They're still, you know, they still stand alone, like everyone stands alone in the best sense. But so, yeah, I was kind of happy with myself, and I'm really glad that I ended the day like this after 5 shows. So thank you so much. You're an incredible lady, and yeah, tell James, and all blessings to you and your family and everything.
Yeah, thank you. I love talking to you, Todd, and yeah, thanks for connecting again today. And I look forward to talking to you soon.
Okay, you take care. I'll see you later.
Well,
Bye-bye.
see ya.